Hi friends, this is Jaylene here, and thanks for joining me today. I wanted to share with you this fun little painting that I did using the bokeh effect as the background and then just some really cool flowers on the forefront of this. And before we get started, I would like to ask you to go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. I really appreciate your support. It helps my channel grow. And so before we get started, I'll go over the supplies list really quick. We do have the watercolor paper, watercolor paints. For the bokeh effect, I'm going to be using these little spongy daubers. And then I will have my Sharpie marker that I'll be using for some of the effects. And then the brush that I'll be using for the background is just this really large number 14 round brush. And you can use whatever size you have. So I'm going to set that aside, and here's my piece of paper. And so what I'm going to do is put some of the colors on the paper, and this is going to be a very wet and loose, and we just want these colors to all kind of blend together. And I'm going to be using reds and oranges and yellows and even a little bit of a rose color in there. So I have very little paint on my brush and an awful lot of water, okay? And I'm starting off with some of the pinkish reds and just kind of moving this around. And there's a couple of different ways that you could do this. You could go ahead and wet your paper first and then start applying all of the colors. I did it a little differently. I'm just going to be blending them on the paper itself. And so now I have grabbed some of my, this is a cadmium orange. And we do want to work fairly quickly with this. We want all of the colors to stay nice and wet so that we can, go ahead and do that bokeh effect. And so we want a lot of paint on our brush. All right, so I have the yellow that I've kind of melded into all of that. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of this is more of a rose color that I'm grabbing here. And keep in mind that watercolors do lighten as they dry, so we want this to be fairly dark. And especially because we will be doing the bokeh effect, and bringing paint off, basically. So we want to make sure that this is, pretty hefty layer of color on here. All right, and we do want to make sure that it's done to all of the edges, at least for this project. I mean, each project could be a little bit different. Okay, so I do have that pretty well covered. Right along here, I'm gonna just kind of lift a little bit of that. I don't really want it running. Okay, so now I'm going to take my one of my little daubers, and I'm going to wet the dauber just a little bit. I don't want a lot of water on there, but I do want it to be wet. So I put it on the paper and I just kind of twist it a little bit, and then dab it off. And let me do this again. Okay, now that's the effect we want right there. Let me come down here. And so this is what the bokeh effect is. It's just, in the movies, it's the muted lights, like in a nighttime scene, that, from street lights or what have you, on Christmas trees. And I'm overlapping a few of these. So you can see I am trying to work relatively quick here just to get some of these on here. So this is going to be, the start of it. I'm going to grab my brush and kind of fine tune the lifting of the paint for some of these that isn't coming all the way off. And it doesn't have to be perfect because a lot of this is just for the background. Then we want a couple going like off of the paper. Okay. That one area doesn't seem to want to lift much. So what we'll do with that is I'm going to grab my brush. Now this is a, let's see, what is this? This is a number 8 round. And I'm just going in, I did wet my brush, but basically what I'm doing is just going in and swirling around in these little white areas where I had used my dauber, just to pull up a little bit more of the paint. And then of course, you know, as the paint dries, it will lighten up even more. And then I do have another little trick up my sleeve that I'll show you in just a moment for these light areas. And you want some of these areas to be a little lighter than others, a little bit larger. And you can see how these are really lightening up nicely. I'm going to put just a small one here if I can. And it's not going to be quite as bright or light as some of the others. And it's really quick to do. And then the flowers, of course, are going to be on this main part, so we don't have to worry quite so much about that area. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to clean my brush, and then I want to make sure that there's a good amount of water on my brush. And I'm going to go into my white paint, and with some paint on the end of it, I'm just tapping into the middle of these. And that's why you want the paper to still be, you know, a little bit wet so that they blend out nicely. You can see how cool that is. And if some of the areas have dried a little bit, then the white won't blend out quite as nice. Okay, so up around here, we can just kind of soften those edges a little bit. Makes for a really cool background. But you do have to kind of play with it a little bit, you know, and get that, just that right look that you want. And like here. And now my brush is very, very dry. Just a small amount of water on there because I want to kind of pull it off of the paper, pull the water off of the paper from around these. Okay, so those are looking really good. And now what we're going to want to do is make sure that this dries really well before we start adding our really cool flowers on top. We don't want any blending taking place with the flowers, so this does all have to be very dry. And as this dries, the colors are going to, let me grab just a little bit more there. The colors are going to change a little bit. They're going to get muted. They'll lighten up somewhat and have a little bit different of a look. It's just a really cool look, you know, for a background of anything. And as I had mentioned, you know, at Christmas time, I do a lot of greeting cards, and they may have snowflakes or Christmas trees. So to get that wintry effect, you use a blue and then do some of the bokeh effect on it, and along with the white. And another thing that we could do, well, I'm not going to do it on this one. We'll leave it as it is and just continue on like this. There are some other things that we could, you know, add to the background just to give it a burst, but I want to stick with this for the time being, and then I can always do another video with a couple of other options for the background. So on that note, I am going to let this dry for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll continue on with the flowers on here. Okay, so I do think that this is dry enough now to continue on with our flowers. And so for the flowers, I will be using, let me grab one of my little mixing trays here. Now for the flowers, the brush that I'm using is going to be a number 8 round Princeton, And you can see that there's a nice fine tip on this, and that's what I like. And the belly of the brush really holds a lot of paint. So for the flowers, these are kind of a, well, they aren't even a real flower. They're just something that I was kind of playing around with earlier today, and I really enjoyed the look of them. So I thought I'd, you know, put them to use somewhere. So I'm grabbing, this is actually just a purple. The name of it on my paint set is, my set of paints here, is purple. I think it looks a little magenta-like, but it's a beautiful, rich color. Okay, so I do have quite a bit of paint on my brush, and I'm going to be putting 3 flowers on here. So these flowers, they're just, I don't know, they're just a wispy. And what I do is the middle of each petal is long, and then I like to kind of, you know, just wiggle in shorter sides to that petal. And then the next petal is going to be long in the middle, and then shorter on the sides of it. And so I'll just go around, making sure that I leave the center open, and I want to paint in 3 or 5 petals for each flower, each of the 3 flowers. And these are just, you know, a fun little flower that I created in my mind. And that's always a fun way to do things. Create it in your mind, even if it's not real. And then we can kind of let them run together and have just a couple extra little wisps here and there if you want. Okay, so that's the first flower. And I will be doing just 3 flowers. I always like to do odd numbers. If you know me and have watched my videos, you know that I'm all about odd numbers. Okay, so for my next one, just kind of drawing these long centers to each petal, being sure to leave plenty of room in the middle of the flower where the stamen will go, and that'll be a nice dark center. And so yes, these are overlapping the other flowers. And as I said, these are really, you know, they're just created in my imagination, so we can do whatever we want, get as creative as we want with these. And then I'm going to put my 3rd flower right about here. And as I mentioned, there's not a lot of water on my brush. This is pretty, you know, pretty heavy with the paint color. So there's 3. Here's 4. And this one I made it just a little too wide, so I'm going to go back on what I said earlier and kind of fill in with yet another one, which that's fine. It makes it look nice and full. Okay. Never say never, right? All right, so let me come back over to this one, and I'm just gonna fill it in a little bit. Make it a little fuller. Okay, all right, so we do have the petals to the flowers drawn in, and look at how cool that background is. I mean, it's just awesome, I think. Okay, so for the stems and the leaves, I want a nice dark green, a nice rich green. So I'm actually going to mix up some blue. Look at that blue, that is just sultry, isn't it? All right, so I'm going to mix up some blue with some yellow, so we get like a nice deep rich green color. And we need these colors to be nice and bold because, you know, to stand out from the background. All right, so Let me grab just a little bit more blue there. All right, so that looks pretty good. I like that. All right, so for this, I do have a lot of paint on my brush. Let me get some of that off. I really don't want that much on there. And I'm just going to draw in a stem. And for the stems of this, because this is you know, just an abstract kind of flower, I'm going to go light and then heavy and make it kind of jagged. And let me grab a little, actually I want a little bit more blue. I want just a little bit deeper. So for this one, I'm going to do the same thing. And then one coming down through here. Okay, really cool looking. All right, so I grabbed a little bit more blue. Now for the leaves, I do want them to be kind of not real soft. I want them more crisp on the edges, so I'm kind of doing a real zigzaggy type of thing here. And you can create whatever types of leaves you want. I just think these look kind of cool, and they do fit the look of the flower. And then over here, let's draw one. Just kind of going real jaggedy. Let me get just a little more water here. Okay. Now, how cool is this looking? This leaf I'm bringing over top of the petals to that flower. And I'm going to do the same over here. And then I'm going to have just a couple little offshoots on these stems. Make them a little thicker down towards the bottom. Okay, that's good. I don't have a ton, well actually I do want this one to be just a little thicker. I don't have a ton of greenery filling things in because I want that background to, you know, show through quite a bit. Okay, very good. All right, I'm liking the flowers. I like the leaves, and the flowers need just a minute to dry. There's still a little bit of this petal that is wet. And once again, for the centers, it's going to be like a dark indigo is the color that I'll be using for the centers. And I don't want any of it blending in with the petals of the flowers. I want it all to be a crisp, clear edging to the colors. So we're going to wait for just a minute for that to dry, and then we can continue on with the next color. And then we will be, after we do the centers, then we'll be adding with the Sharpie marker just some real sharp kind of squiggly lines, and you know, just add a little emphasis to the petals of the flower, to the petals and to the leaves of the flowers. I think I said that right. So anyway, let's give this a minute to dry, and then we'll continue on with the next step. And while we're waiting for this, I would like to remind you, if you haven't already, to go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're enjoying this video, hit the like button. I really appreciate that. And definitely leave comments down below, comments and questions. I do like to read all of them, and I get back to everyone. And then if you want to see more videos as they come out, go ahead and hit that bell, and it's a notification bell, and you'll be notified when I do have new videos coming out. So on that note, we're going to give this just a minute to dry, and then we'll continue on and get this finished up. Okay, so I think this is dry enough now. I've freshened up my water, and I'm ready to go. So let me grab this little tray again. Okay, so for the centers of the flowers, I am going to be using indigo, which is a nice deep color, and that's going to work just perfect for the look that I want. And so I do have quite a bit of paint on my brush. And then just with the very tip of this, I'm going to go in and kind of, let me get just a little bit more water. I'm going to go in and kind of just do little dabs and crisscrosses and, you know, just kind of be a little sloppy in there and not real precise. I do like to leave a little bit of the background color showing through, okay? And we could do just dots or little lines, crisscross. It doesn't have to be you know, a perfect circle, because nothing about this is perfect. And that's how we want it. That's intentional. Unperfect is intentional. There, see how I'm leaving a lot of the background showing through on those? That's exactly the look that I do want. Okay, so that's great. Clean my brush off, and then what I want to do is move this aside, and I'm going to grab my black Sharpie marker, and with this we're just going to have some fun. And we're going to be very careful not to touch that paint on the inside in the center of the flowers. We'll work around that. And I just real lightly or real quick, you know, draw once up through that, the longest part of each of the petals, and then maybe one or two lines highlighting the shorter sides of the petals. And it just adds a lot of texture and depth. Many times when I'm painting flowers, I would use a different color of paint to do this and achieve the same effect. But I thought, you know, using the marker, it's much bolder, and that's really the look that I'm going for, is a nice bold look. And we don't want to do too much, you know, keep it fairly light. We don't want to, you know, like overcast on the color of the flowers or the petals. So once you have the black marker, you know, kind of sketched in a little bit, towards the center, I like to go in and just put in some dots. I put dots on everything. I love them. I think they add texture and whimsy to just about anything. And I love the word whimsical, which you'll see because I use it in just about all my videos. So I'm just kind of putting in dots. It adds some nice texture to it. Maybe one or two out on the longer areas of the petals, but not too much. Keeping it towards the center. Okay, and then for the stems and leaves, I do want to just kind of loosely, you know, draw around those to give them a little bit of a highlight. And there again, nothing solid, you know, and just kind of add a little bit of a, I don't know, whimsy to that too, I guess. That's my word of the day. So we'll just kind of come down through here. And you can see I'm just kind of highlighting in a couple of areas. I'm not doing a full tracing around any of the leaves or solid up and down the stems of the flowers. And then over here, I'm going to just kind of go like that. Okay. All right, so that really completes it. That's the finishing touch. So that background with the bokeh effect is just really cool. You can use it, you know, as I've mentioned a couple times in this video, you can always use it at Christmas time, but to do something like this is a lot of fun. If you're painting like a field of wildflowers, to have this as the background rather than just the sky, that's really cool. So there's so many things that you can do with it. I think I'm going to start using it a little more often. I kind of forget about it, and I always have fun with it, and it makes for a real, just a real playful technique that we can all have fun with. So on that note, one last time, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel And I do hope that you will join me on future videos. And until next time, ciao for now.